Hey, and welcome to the Neurodivergent Musician Podcast, where I explore the world of neurodiversity and musicianship. I'm your host, John Hart, and today I'll be joined by Mr. Andy Baker, where we'll be talking about online music business. Each episode is broken up into a traffic-like format where we'll share insights in the red section, improvised babble in the amber, and recommendations you might find handy in the green. So let's head on over to the red section where Andy will introduce himself. Okay, so now into the red section. How you doing, Andy?
Yeah, doing very well, thank you, John. Really nice to connect with you again. I know we spoke very recently, but it's really good to join you and really excited by what's happening with this podcast. It seems like you're touching on some really important topics, but I'm doing really well. Refreshed after a nice weekend, so really pleased to share some of my thoughts over this podcast.
Brilliant. So I know a lot about you already. I've worked for yourself and we've worked on lots of different things, but tell everybody who you are.
Yeah, I'm Andy Baker. Andy Baker, the music maker in many respects. I've been working in music since I was quite young. I set up a company called Resound Media straight out of university. So I started out as a writer and producer, having played in bands as a teenager and been involved in music in the church growing up. And then over the course of the past kind of 18 years or so, I've worn many, many different hats in the music industry. Always the same hairstyle. I don't have any hair, which, it's not as good for those who are listening. They can't kind of marvel at my shiny bald head. But I've worn all these different hats, writer, producer, manager, booking agent. And then I've also stepped into the world of tech through a crowdfunding platform that I launched called Rocket Fuel. And we have a new learning platform that we're kind of in the process of soft launching called LearnX. So I've got a lot of different things that I've been involved in and quite a few things I'm still involved with. But I'm just here really to help and encourage artists. I'm a creative at heart. I know, I guess, how difficult it can be to merge and marry music and business. The two don't always go hand in hand, but when they do go hand in hand, when you find that sweet spot, it's a really beautiful thing.
When did you start moving into sort of the online space in regards to online music business space?
Yeah, so I guess my journey's been a slow evolution. I was managing artists back in the days before social media, and you'd get a big thick roll of £20 notes every time you go out and sell merchandise and CDs, and then it became clear, with things like Napster coming along, all these kind of things, that actually there's going to be a big digital revolution. And we had obviously social media just literally a couple of years after I'd started my business. Social media really started to move forward. And I guess at that point, I started looking at how to serve the artists that I was managing and looking after through, being switched on with what's happening online. So my movement into kind of online music business has kind of been phased in many different ways through various different things I've done over the years. But I guess it kind of started around the time when social media became very prevalent back in the kind of mid 2000s, 2006, 2007. Obviously, MySpace was the first kind of thing, and then Facebook, and then many things from there.
And what was the first thing you delved into? So I remember when I was doing something similar. I was trying to do gigs. I was trying to do teaching and things as well. And then when I went to go and enter into the online land, I think my head there were so many different avenues I could have gone down. I tried lots of different areas. But did you sort of settle on, I'm going to go down this avenue first, or did you try lots of different things?
I've always been someone to try things out, and I've always been someone to experiment, and some platforms seem to make sense. For me, when Spotify started to gain prominence, it was clear that streaming was going to be a really big thing. I was just really unsure as to whether the artist I was managing would actually make much money from Spotify. Having come from a tradition of getting artists out touring, and then selling direct to fans and building email lists to sell merch and all this kind of stuff. I could see where streaming was going, and that it was going to be, you know, a real great opportunity for the end user, and would be, you know, massive for consumers, and therefore, you know, a big way for music discovery and potentially for monetization. But I just wasn't sure whether it was the right area to really focus, and that's why I ended up actually getting into crowdfunding, because I just felt that artists, you know, have an element of control. You know, if they can build up relationships with fans, and they can articulate their mission and their vision, you know that a certain percentage of people, say on an email list or who you can reach directly, will respond to that opportunity to get involved with the project and support the artist. With streaming, of course, I can't deny the importance of streaming in the digital music economy, but it's very difficult to control. It's very difficult to know what will happen when you release your new single. Will it get as many streams as last time? Will it get on the next playlist? Will it get on the same playlist again? You just don't know exactly how it's going to work. And of course, there are lots of things you can do. But I'm quite a pragmatist in many ways. So for me, going into crowdfunding, which is kind of my first step into tech, we launched Rocket Fuel actually in 2014, and that seemed to make sense for me. That seemed to be something which I felt would be quite predictable. And having seen loads of success with artists, I'm really glad that we took that step.
And you find this is sort of the question with regards to streaming, because it's so gated. In regards to, you could go and get lots of streams. I've been able to achieve millions of streams with Spotify, but it's sort of that modest income that you get out of it, and it just barely pays for a monthly sort of music business sub, rather than this kind of, you know, I'm going to get an income from it. And I suppose since learning about Rocket Fuel, since learning about crowdfunding, I found that the argument with regards to streaming is that gated community, that a lot of those streaming platforms, you can't get access to those listeners, to those streams, to be able to put them onto your mailing list, to be able to, unless you've got some kind of secret, you know, you can add social links on there, but if they've got to click on a social link and then go through to this, it's so many hurdles to get them onto your mailing list.
Yeah.
What, do you feel that was also a factor into, you know, you not steering away from the streaming, but it was almost like those sorts of things, gated community, streams that were earning you, you know, what is it, 0.0003 per stream, that led you into sort of that crowdfunding space as well? And with crowdfunding, did you have any influence from other platforms or anyone else that was using crowdfunding?
Yeah, so there were many different kind of aspects to this this kind of riddle. So in many ways, I see streaming as a great way to attract a crowd, but it's not a great way to build community, because you don't have, as you say, John, any access to those listeners or the data. You're in a closed system. You know, you're at someone else's event, you're building your business on someone else's platform. So we kind of use this idea of, you know, essentially we call it the 5-circle funnel. So, you know, you want to attract the outer circle, into your crowd. You know, so these are kind of surfers and streamers in the outer circle. You want to try and attract them into your crowd of spectators. Now, once you get people into a crowd of spectators at somewhere like YouTube or Spotify, you want to then try and build a community of subscribers. Now, there are some kind of elements of subscription that you get with Spotify or YouTube, but ultimately you don't have the data. You can't reach people directly. And what I've learned from doing a lot of email marketing, for example, is I know that 35% of people will open my emails, and most of these emails are kind of me just sharing content or even doing sales or marketing. 35% of people are opening these emails. So I get guaranteed attention, and you know, a few people unsubscribe now and again, but actually the numbers are very, very consistent. Whereas if we look at social media feeds, you know, are 35% of people seeing your posts? No, they're not. It's a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction see your posts. and it's really hard to get people's attention. So what we try and then encourage people to do is, find ways to build community where you can, engage with your subscribers. An email list might be one, a Facebook group could be another, a WhatsApp group might be another, or even better, if you've got your own space where you can connect with, with your fans, followers, your friends, etc. That's going to help warm things up. And then you want to draw people into a core of paying supporters. Because what we found through Rocket Fuel is the average supporter is very typically worth over $100 per year when you add up, product purchases, and we do subscriptions at Rocket Fuel, much like you can do at Patreon, but we have the online store plus the subscription plus the crowdfunding aspect. $100 on average per year is so much better than, 1 cent per year on average, which if you do the maths on Spotify streaming, a lot of artists I would see when they share their Spotify Wrapped, the average listener listens to maybe 4 songs a year from that artist. And so if you do the maths on that, the supporter is worth around about a cent a penny, not very much. And so, the average core supporter, if you're getting someone into a place like Rocket Fuel, is going to be worth actually 10,000 times more revenue per supporter on average. So, the question is it easier to get one supporter into the core or 10,000 into the crowd? Now, of course, you want to do both. I'm not saying to anyone, don't build a crowd of spectators on socials or on streaming platforms. But what I'm saying is if you have millions of people streaming your music, you want to draw them deeper, get their data, get their details, because you're going to need that if you want to sell tours, if you want to get promoters excited about working with you, and if you want to make money through merch, etc., etc. The best thing is to kind of funnel people, is to get people at crowd level and build community, and then establish a core of spenders and supporters. So I think you kind of need to do both sides of the equation. We never say to people, Rocket Fuel is not a platform for promoting your music so that new people discover it. That's not why we built Rocket Fuel. It's really like you have a crowd of any size, whether that's just friends and family or whether it's lots of fans and followers. It's actually just the best way to monetize that audience to increase lifetime value of a customer. That's kind of what we're trying to help people to do.
And I think when, we've spoken to a lot of music artists, and I've we've both dealt with a lot of music artists, and I find their mindset, obviously, a lot of music artists' mindset is very much in the camp of creating music. That's what they want to do. And they want to train themselves into the business, but it is very icky and salesy and I think changing that mindset to social media and the streaming platforms, although they are the vehicle, they are the starting point and they're not the end point. And I think a lot of music artists see that as the start and finish, like streaming and social media. They put all their eggs into one sack with that. But those two things are not your engine room, and they will not generate the funds you need to be able to, keep your music business going and obviously keep the music creation going. And what I found about Rocket Fuel, I did a similar crowdfunding platform. It was Pledge back in the day. I mean, they folded, I think, I can't remember how many years ago. It was Pledge Music. I crowdfunded it. We kind of didn't hit the mark. They had no training with this particular platform. So it was like a few videos, slap up something, put it up there, and they didn't really teach you or train you how to branch out. And we didn't get the funds and things. And then they said, okay, well, you didn't hit the mark, so we've now refunded everybody. And that was, I could have had a fixed mindset of, well, crowdfunding doesn't work for me. And there's probably a lot of music artists who kind of have those processes. But when I went to Rocket Fuel, and this was the beauty of it, the platform was amazing, but the training was so vital. What I love about the space theme and stuff, there's no way you'd send up anyone on a rocket without going through a whole training program or an academy, And I think that is out of everything I went through regards to Rocket Fuel, and why I was successful with it is because it had a step-by-step training, and then the team as well, and everything you're building on top of it. It changed my mindset because I was in the Spotify camp, the streaming camp, the social media is the start and end engine, and put them like a Facebook shop or whatever it was, not realizing that the mailing list is almost like the gateway to what we called, the theme park or the attractions. And then Rocket Fuel, along with a few others, is the engine that is actually going to keep your music business and career going. And I wondered if you saw, when you looked at other platforms in regards to the training, I think you did, you saw that as one of the unique points of Rocket Fuel as well.
Yeah. So we actually launched Rocket Fuel a long time ago. Back in 2014, I'd done 26 crowdfunding campaigns on other people's platforms. So I'd used Pledge Music and Kickstarter, Indiegogo, Crowdfunder.co.uk, and others. And we were successful with 25 of 26 campaigns. We had an incredible success record with helping music artists that we were working with. But when it came to using the platforms, like you say, there was something missing. And we felt that the something missing was in part kind of features, but in part support. And so we developed something that brought together your online store plus crowdfunding plus subscriptions in one place, plus support from a team. And we had a couple of people working with us in the kind of artist support camp, just getting alongside artists, helping them. And this was 2014 when we launched, and video conferencing was still quite clunky and all this kind of stuff. And we underestimated how much help people needed. We just kind of thought, well, it kind of makes sense. You'll follow this. Here's a training manual. Go through this, go through that, follow the steps. But a lot of people needed hand-holding. And when you think about it, it's understandable, because most people hadn't done 26 crowdfunding campaigns like I'd done. They were looking at maybe doing their first one. And it can be quite daunting when you're doing something for the first time. And there are lots of platforms out there, but we just thought there's nowhere that really offers partnership. And that was what we wanted to really do through Rocket Fuel. And so we launched the platform, and we had some great successes. And Philippa, who I used to manage, an amazing artist called Philippa Hanna, we actually raised over £100,000 through the platform. The method worked tremendously well. We made more money through Rocket Fuel than we would have done by using a hybrid of, a platform here, an online store there, et cetera, et cetera. It worked tremendously well. But the challenge was, we had people doing account management, and it was very, very time consuming and costly, and still something felt like it was missing. So the platform, sadly, after launching it, after about 3 years of giving it the best shot, and it just felt like we couldn't pump more money into it to get it to the next level, to get more people adopting it, to get, the level of support that was required. So we decided to just let it simmer. So we didn't put it on the shelf. We didn't kind of fold it or anything like that. We just thought, well, let's not try and push this for the time being, because we've not quite got all of the ingredients in place to make this, the business that we want to make it. And so when COVID happened, when everyone was at home and not able to work, and so many musicians were just, not able to do much if they're not recording at home, they're definitely not out earning from gigs, etc. We just thought, we've got to do something here. There's got to be something we can do. And one of my mentors, a guy called Stephen, really amazing guy, he'd done very well in the kind of world of online learning. So I remember him asking me a question, have you ever thought about doing a course, doing some courses for your music training, and, maybe, kind of pointed at Rocket Fuel. And I kind of thought, what, we could do that. So I kind of had this bubbling away. And then at the start of COVID, I just thought, do you know what, if we relaunch Rocket Fuel, if we put in a training course with, videos and community groups and all this kind of stuff, maybe we could create the kind of environment that's really conducive to people succeeding. Because like you said, John, when you went through Rocket Fuel Academy, you really enjoyed the training, but also I know you've mentioned many times to me before about how, the kind of peer-to-peer kind of support really helped as well. So getting to know other people who are doing the same kind of process. And so we decided to do it. We relaunched the platform, got some new features in place. We launched the Rocket Fuel Academy. And from there, we managed to raise more money, within 12 months of relaunching than we did in the first 5 years. And so, having kind of, when we've hit the $1 million mark, been a really significant milestone for us. You know, it's not a massive platform in comparison with some of the other platforms out there, but having proven the concept, you know, we're really excited about the next adventure, you know, the next big milestone, which is going to be a big one. But I think the thing is, like you said, the training is very much the first thing. We don't just point people to the tools. You know, imagine just being given some like I don't know, being given a chainsaw or something. I'm not particularly, you know, I'm not a handyman by any stretch, but if I was given a chainsaw, I wouldn't quite know what to do with it. I wouldn't know how to use it safely. I'd need a little bit of training, just an instructional, you know, from someone who knows what they're doing to avoid chopping my leg off or something like that. So absolutely training before the tools. But I think the combination is their training, tools, and team, and that's what really helps people to succeed.
Awesome. So what we'll do, we'll take a quick break and we'll head on over to the Amber section where we'll go into some stories about online music business, maybe some of the good and the bad from both us. And yeah, we'll see you then. Welcome back. We're now into the Amber section where we're just going to go into some improvised stuff. So what advice, Andy, would you give if you had a musician who was moving from a hobby into career and then they were to start to venture online and they had all these signposts of where, you know, what direction they could head into? What advice would you give them for that sort of starting point?
Yeah, so I'm a visual learner. So, you know, a lot of people are, 65% of people are visual learners. And in the music space, it's probably going to be even high, much higher than that. So when I start to think about, you know, what advice would I give people, or people ask me for advice, it usually comes with quite a long answer, which needs contextualizing. Because I think the thing is, advice, you know, kind of out on a limb on its own is sometimes useless. You know, there isn't one bit of advice standing on its own that's going to make all the difference. So the thing I would often do is point people to a framework. So I spend a lot of my time developing visual frameworks. And I know for an audio podcast, it's kind of a bit more challenging to to demonstrate a visual framework, but using metaphors and pictures and imagery actually it's not as difficult as it might first seem. So we have a framework called the Jigsaw. Now, the Jigsaw is 9 puzzle pieces. Now, you know, you've got kids like myself, John, and you know, you've probably done many puzzles, many jigsaws on the, you know, the dining room table or on the living room floor, and sometimes you're trying to put together a puzzle and a piece that you think fits just doesn't fit, and you're like, well, hang on, I thought this fitted here, and it doesn't work. And sometimes people try to force these things together, and that can sometimes be, you know, your offering doesn't quite serve your audience. You know, you've got this amazing product you've developed, you've got a new album or something, and people aren't going crazy for it. And you go, but I want to force this together. I want to make sure it works. And sometimes, you know, we all know this one that, you know, you want your income to be higher, but it's the costs that are higher and the income that's lower. Again, the puzzle pieces don't fit together. Or maybe you have, you know, a mission to become really successful in your market as an artist, or, you know, as a musician, or with your business, and you go for a meeting with someone. I remember going for a meeting before Christmas with a very, very successful multi-millionaire businessman in the music industry, and you know, I thought I could give him, you know, loads of great value, and I thought, you know, he'd be really impressed with my ideas, and he just wasn't interested whatsoever. You know, my mission didn't serve the partner that I was sitting down with, to the prospective partner. He just wasn't interested. The puzzle piece didn't fit. He wasn't excited about my ideas, which I'm not used to, because most people love my ideas, because I have loads of really good ones. So essentially what we do with the Jigsaw is we look at these puzzle pieces. The 9 puzzle pieces are mission, offering, audience, channels, resources, partners, income streams, cost structures, and activities. And we just help people work out, you know, are these puzzle pieces fitting together? You know, is your mission aligned with your activities, or are you spending time doing things each day that don't really line up with your goals and objectives? So when people ask me for advice, I tend to point them towards one of the many frameworks I've developed. The Jigsaw is one. That's a business planning framework, and really start to ask questions, about how the pieces are fitting together or where they're not fitting together, because that really gives someone a tool. It gives them a diagnostic tool through which they can actually work out their own advice, and when you've got your own reason for doing something, you're much more likely to do it than because someone else tells you to do something. So I love to ask questions, rather than tell people what to do, because I think you spent a lot of years doing that. Say, hey, you need to do this. Hey, do you know what? You should do this. But actually, since I kind of flipped it around and started developing these visual frameworks and asking lots of questions, I feel actually people come to the answers that are right for them. Because you don't want to just prescribe things to people without a diagnosis. That's called malpractice in the world.
And I suppose, it's kind of similar with guitar lessons. I've had a few people recently, now after 15 years and things, and they were like, oh, my child, whatever it is, wants to learn guitar. And I kind of, sort of telling them the how, I'm like, why do they want to learn the guitar? Is there a particular reason? Do they want to learn that song for this particular, their dad, or do they want to go and play with this person? And most of the time they're like, oh no, just showed an interest. And it's like, what I'd rather you do is just go to the why of, and it sounds very similar, where rather than telling them the how, it's like, well, tell me the why. And then you'll be able to figure, your intuition will start to kick in, and then you'll start to put all those Lego bricks and the jigsaws, puzzle pieces together, obviously using the framework. And the framework, very much, I've worked through the Jigsaw, it is very much based on a why. It's like starting with the mission. What is your mission? Why are you doing this? And that very much goes into, your audience. Why would you want that audience? Why would you want to do this? Rather than, how do I go and get that audience? How do I go and get that? I think is that kind of loosely, if the advice would be, why are you doing this first? And then you go,
that is the question it so often comes back to. It is so easy to get lost with the what and the how and forget the why. And it might seem blatantly obvious to you, but I know my why, but I know for many years, as I would articulate what I do and how I do it, people would just think, well, that's all I'm interested in is my how and my what. And I didn't spend that long explaining my why to people, but I think since spending more time and to really articulate that, to share that with my team, to share that with people we work with, to share that with artists and entrepreneurs that we work with, I think you get a deeper level of resonance from people when you articulate that. So asking the question of why is so important. But in terms of advice, just to give an example, the example of the Jigsaw framework, if you want to succeed with what you're doing in music, in business, in online music business, you need to journey with people who take you back to those questions. You need to have people on your team who are going to keep grounding you with asking those questions. Does this puzzle piece fit with this piece? Is there a disconnect? Is there a misalignment? Because if you don't have people doing that, the danger is you will just get lost in the how and the what. And you'll see adverts every day of the week. You'll see adverts on social media saying, here's the solution. Here are the magic beans. Here's the magic wand. Just sign up for this program. It will solve all of your problems, answer all of your prayers. And that's believing that someone else can come along and give you a shortcut with a how and a what. And it's not that people who are selling these programs don't have anything of value to offer, but really, your long-term success will depend upon the actions that you consistently take. And if you're consistently asking the right questions, you'll be consistently taking the right steps of action. But in order to be consistently asking the right questions, you need people around you who are able to see the big picture, because a lot of people just jump in. I want the steps. Give me the steps. And I would say, okay, well, to know what steps to take, what's the strategy? and then they might have a few ideas with strategy. But in order to understand fully the strategy, you've got to think, well, what are the systems that underpin the strategy? And in order to think about what systems underpin the strategy, you've got to think about the structures in terms of, you know, what roles are you performing? You know, how many different hats are you wearing? How much time do you have? Is your music a hobby? And there's no shame in it being a hobby. And it's okay if you're listening to this podcast and music's a hobby. That's cool. What a great hobby to have. Absolutely. Yeah, I love sport, but sport is a hobby. You know, as a kid, I wanted to be a footballer, but, you know, as many did. But, you know, you can enjoy it. You can do it at a serious level. But if is the aim to make profit, you know, if the aim is to make profit, it's a business and you've got to treat it like a business. And if you treat your business like a hobby, it's very unlikely to succeed. And if you treat your hobby, you know, kind of thinking it's a business, you'll be disappointed. You won't enjoy it. And that's the purpose of a hobby in the first place. And some artists, you know, I work with some artists, it's like, well, what is the aim here? And so for some people, even a charity model is a better model. They can get paid. They've, you know, got many advantages. They get a team around them of trustees to help them with their mission. And again, there's no kind of shame in saying, well, actually, I don't know, I've got a business here, but maybe I've got a charity for the community or to serve an audience in a particular way. But structures are essential. And before you can get the structure in place, you've got to see the big picture. And this is where people often get quite lost because their frame of reference has some huge holes in it. It's like going back to the jigsaw. They can see, you know, maybe 5 or 6 of the pieces, but there's another 3 or 4 pieces that they can't see or they don't understand how they fit together. And if you fail to see the big picture, the danger is you won't have the system structure. The strategy is going to be a bit flimsy, and the steps that you take will often be 2 steps forward, 1 step back, rather than 3 steps forward. And so we try and help people just to understand where they are, where perhaps something has gone amiss, because it's really easy to just say to someone, hey, if you just pay me this money as a coach or a consultant, or just sign up for this course, you'll know the steps to take and you'll magically arrive in, you know, the dream predicament, or, you know, in the golden city, wherever it might be you want to get to. There's lots of people selling a mirage, but ultimately you've got to make sure you see the big picture. You have structures, systems, then strategy and steps.
And do you find that it was always very much like, oh, if I get a label, if I get a record deal, then all my dreams come true? It's that ever since I remember watching when I was like 11, 12, there's that Tom Hanks movie called That Thing You Do, which was with the band.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Right, which is great. It was one of those, but my aunt made me forget about the ending of that. And just you can just get a one-hit wonder and you just go and blast and, you know, and get really, really successful. And I think, you know, I forgot about the ending where it all disbanded because they didn't have the structures, or they didn't have, you know, they didn't have their roles and all sorts of other stuff. And it's that film, it kind of made me think of a lot of artists see as like, if I get a record deal, that's it. I'm now on the platform. I'm hitting new lights, you know, new areas. But I mean, the record label now compared to the record label, you know, decades ago is completely different. I don't know. I mean, do you have any thoughts on that side? And I suppose, because I'm now you know, I suppose an independent musician, and I didn't choose the record label route, and that's because I get complete control of my mission or however I'm going forward. Yeah. It's a lot more work, but I kind of feel now, because I'm 30 years in, it's almost like I because of the why, I'm just doing it now. I'm like, no, I'm happy with where I am. I'm not reaching for like mega heights and things. I think having that realistic mindset now has allowed me to carry on my career. And I'm like, I can have this for the rest of my life. I suppose it's that expectation as well, or, you know, is a massive thing. And if they think record label is going to go and get that and they don't get that, it can very quickly crash. So the why's got to be realistic. It's got to be that really realistic expectation. Convoluted, but I just wondered if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think the whole role of record companies has obviously evolved and changed. And, you know, the big companies have really adapted their models and the deals that they sign. And it's an interesting time. I mean, the the music industry is growing, and a lot of that is being pushed forward by streaming. I think it was 2021, the industry grew its fastest rate in 20 years, and it's kind of, it's exciting. Labels are signing people, and there are better deals on offer because people are being competitive. And of course, you can just release your own records, and there's a growing trend of independent releases charting, and independent releases are taking an increasing level of market share. So it's a very exciting time for independents, but also it's a time of evolution for labels. So of course, labels come with infrastructure and expertise and team and muscle and relations and maybe international infrastructure that you're just not going to get if you're doing everything kind of in-house or just with an aggregator. So, I always kind of come back to this idea of there are three characters involved in constructing your brand: the architect, the builder, and the maintainer. So again, visual learner here. I like to think about the architecture, but I think for some people when they're starting a business, and it's no fault of their own because maybe they've not had someone to help them this way, but the architect just tends to be quite sketchy. As in, there's a sketch. I know what I want to build. I want to create this, and it looks a bit like this, and I can dream and think about the platforms and think about the places that I'll perform if I'm a musician, or I'll think about the profit I'll make if I'm a business owner, etc. But the problem is people just jump into the building after doing a sketch, and building is fun. It's great fun to build tracks in the studio. It's great fun to build content, great fun to build an audience. It's great, build. And the danger with building, though, is that you can feel like you're making progress because you're busy. You feel like the endorphins are going, the adrenaline's going because I'm busy, I'm working hard. And we've all been told that if we build it, they will come. But it's another myth. And what can happen is because the technical drawing, the real kind of due diligence that an architect performs has been neglected, the danger is you've just put up a wall in the wrong place. You've just built something. I've just built out this amazing email sequence, but I didn't realize I actually needed to, run some paid ads to actually get people in, or, and so what happens is people go looking for those who will build with them or build for them, because the thing that a builder, really likes is a camaraderie of someone coming along, and I'm working hard, so I want someone else who's going to work hard with me. And so people look for a manager. Now, the manager can perform the role of the maintainer, helping to make sure things are orderly and organized. But often people are just looking for another builder. They're looking for another laborer. And the architect is just kind of standing on the sidelines, kind of saying, guys, you're in the wrong place, or have you thought about this? Or, there isn't even a blueprint you're following. And so I try and encourage people, start with the architecture. Make sure you have an architect on your team. And if you're talking to other companies, be it managers or labels or whoever it might be, don't just fall into the trap of thinking that if you build it, they will come. You have to make sure that you've thought through the costs of building your brand. As the son of an accountant, I've got this in my DNA. I'm very, very numbers and metric oriented, and I like to analyze, I like to plan, I like to forecast, I like to do the technical measurements, and as well as the sketching. I love to sketch, I love to dream, all that kind of stuff. But it's so important that you have a blueprint that you're working from. It's so important that you don't just get sucked into building, because the danger is, without the foundations in place, without the measurements, you put in all that work, you build it, and it falls down. I live in on the edge of Gloucester, cathedral city. They didn't just start putting some bricks together for the cathedral. It's like there literally been decades of architecture that went into that process, and that's why the building is still standing 1,000 years later. I think a lot of people take the DIY artist approach, and it's great, you can do it yourself, but you just got to think, am I building like a garden shed here, or am I building a cathedral? And I'm much more interested in working with artists who entrepreneurs who are more cathedral builders than people putting up a garden shed or something like that. It's great you can be DIY, but if you want to make a splash, if you want to, if you want your music to have a legacy, you've got to look at the architectural side.
And with the architectural side, in regards to the blueprints, and when I've gone into business plans and I've gone into other things, it's almost a case of, and we're talking about grant forms, and I know we've had discussions that all of these processes require that different hat, because obviously the creativity you have with music and things, and then you've then got to switch over to this, I feel, to this academic hat, or to the other side of my brain where it is very, it's facts and figures, and I'm good at processes, I'm just not good at plans. And what would be the advice for a lot of musicians who are creative thinkers to be able to go down that process? And we've talked about music in some ways, of when you read music and you look at notation, it's all very black and white, whereas music's so colorful. How do you take the same approach with something like the business planning, which is so vital for the structure, the foundations of your business? The reason why a lot of musicians skip it and they go into either building music or they go into building websites. And I've done this, and I threw myself into a business without even knowing what I was doing, and then had to backtrack. And I think probably a lot of musicians have done that, or they're thinking about, oh, this is a hobby. Oh, that just actually will just transition over to becoming, a career musician. I suppose, where would you start? Would you start with the plan? And in regards to how does that creatively fit into a musician's world if they were doing it themselves, or would you outsource that? A lot of info. Sorry.
There's a few angles there. I think the first thing is accountability. Now, I have several people who I make myself accountable to. Some of those are personal friends or personal connections. Others of those are people who I commit to speaking to regularly. Some very formal, some very informal, some I pay, some I don't. Some who work for me, and I build it into our relationship and their task lists to make me accountable. Because the thing is, without accountability, it's a bit pie in the sky that you're going to have all the willpower in the world to do everything right. And I think one of the first things you need to be accountable for is the fact that each one of those three characters has to show up to work. There's no use saying, well, the builder's working 7 days a week, but what about the architect? When does he or she come to work? And if they don't show up to work, then you're failing in terms of constructing your project. It's no good saying, well, the builder's working, the maintainer has to show up. There's no point in, working hard and leaving a mess. You've got to maintain things, but there's also no point in starting something that you can't complete, because that's just not the best way of going. So I would suggest, writing out a job spec for each of your different hats. There might be 15 different hats that you wear, but a simple way that I do this with people is through the architect, builder, maintainer, or by breaking your organization down into different divisions, like the creative division, the admin division, the marketing division, the customer service division, and then thinking through what's involved in that role. Which day of the week does that person turn up? And then I try and encourage people with really simple things, like putting in recurring questions, to ask themselves, every 3 months, asking yourself, is my plan up to date? Putting that in your calendar, putting that in your project management system. Are there any processes that I could streamline? Are there any apps that would help me to get work done quicker? And you want to be asking yourself, these questions in each of these areas. Have a list of creative questions that you ask yourself every month or every 3 months. Have a list of administrative questions that you ask yourself every month, every 3 months. Maybe, even annually, have a meeting with yourself to look at your, legal compliance and terms and conditions on your website, whatever it might be. The key is to visit these things regularly, because a lot of people who I speak to in music, they kind of say, well, I'm just looking for a manager. They're looking for someone to come along who will oversee the building, be the architect, be the maintainer, so I can just do what I enjoy. Now, that's really nice. It's a really nice idea, but on planet Earth, the likelihood of that happening is quite slim. It's not impossible. I don't want to say and I know people where that's been their reality, that's where they've ended up. But for every person where that is the reality, they've had someone come along and do everything for them so they can literally just focus on what they would like to do, writing, recording, performing on stage, and they don't have to worry about anything else. For every one person where that's their reality, I could show you 1,000 other people who, are not far off in terms of level of talent, who that isn't the reality for.
Yeah.
So I just encourage people to be realistic. If you're looking for a manager, great. You need to be really clear with the manager what you want them to do, what's expected of them, what things they do need to measure, all that kind of stuff. Because you don't want to employ a manager thinking that they're going to build for you. If the manager comes along and says, well, actually, I'm just here to help you with your plan and to manage, and it's like, if there's nothing to manage, that's not going to work. Managers traditionally aren't there to be your booking agent and your publisher and your sync agent and all of this. A manager will be there to coordinate all those things. And in order to attract that kind of team, you're going to need a really compelling plan, as well as a great product, as well as great music. You're going to need a compelling plan, because no one wants to jump on board a ship unless they know where the captain's steering it. No one wants to get on board with that. And I think that's the thing. You can't expect a manager to come along and give you a plan, because then it's not even your plan. You want to be clear on what your plan is, and then find the people to help you move that plan forward. So that's kind of what I spend a lot of my time doing, is trying to help people to engage with, where they are, to, look at which areas need work. Is it
take a step back and
absolutely
take a step back. Whoa, just hold on wherever you're going. Because sometimes also a lot of musicians want it done by tomorrow. They want to do it next week. Like, no, if you're releasing stuff, an album, just if you've spread it over how many years. I mean, obviously that's additional advice, but I think in regards to, like you were saying there, take a step back from everything and actually going through your trainings and a lot of things that I picked up on over time. I was like, whoa, actually, I've got to take a step back here and also be slow and steady and not just like 100 mile per hour all the time, because I just miss things all the time. And then work out, even before I get my team, why do I need my team? Who do I need that authentic mission as well? Authenticity is a massive thing as well. It's just kind of like, if you're working on someone else's plan, then it might not fit to your vision, and it's always disjointed. So taking that step back and figuring out why am I doing this? Why am I doing my music? Why do I need to get that person on board? I personally have learned, you've done this as well. We've learned a little bit from every area of our business. Not to the point, I'm not an expert in those areas, but I've learned a lot about sales. I've learned a lot about marketing, and then I want to outsource, to someone else who's got the expertise. Absolutely. But I know enough knowledge not to have misunderstandings, and also costly misunderstandings. And my mission now is to be able to build up that team slowly. But since going through your trainings, that's what took a step back. And I think a lot of musicians face that. They want this, which is like a 26-mile marathon, the end product. They haven't worked out all the steps in between and the miles in between. I think
it's really hard, because there's so many areas to cover as an independent music artist. The idea you're a singer-songwriter is not correct. It's not a good description, because you're also, if you're not working with a big team, you're your own marketing manager, you're a social media content creator, you're the bookkeeper, you're the booking agent, you're everything. You're wearing all the different hats. And so I think one of the key things is, don't beat yourself up if you're finding it hard, but get help. Don't kind of just do it alone, and don't expect someone to come along with a magic wand. Like you say, John, you've got to try and understand a little bit about a lot of different things, because then you can find the right people. You can appreciate the art of what a booking agent does, or you can appreciate the art of what a manager would do. And then you can go into conversations understanding what the other party could do for you, and whether it's even feasible. If you're not currently able to get 100 people down to a hometown headline show, why on earth would a national
that's your first step. That's your first step. Go down and get your stuff to be able to build up to that. A
national booking agent isn't going to be able to book you, big tours or anything like this. It's just not going to be the right time to approach those conversations. But I think we're always looking at, the road? You know, is the purpose clear? You know, if it isn't, let's start there. Is there a plan? You know, a business plan isn't a release plan. A release plan is a short-term project for your next single. You need a
Small
business plan.
destinations. We're not taking a holiday to Australia. We're taking a little tiny trip to a national trust or whatever it is. You know,
you want to work that out. You're showing your age there, John. National trust.
I don't mind. It's family subscription.
Then it's the process. Then it's looking at the product and the partners and the promo, and ultimately building the platform. That's got to keep asking the questions. Where are things not clear?
Cool. Oh, well, on that note, let's take a quick break. And so that is our amber section. And then we're going to go into the green section where Andy will come. Well, he'll tell us a recommendation. And see you in a bit. Okay, so we're back into the green section. So, Andy, do you have a recommendation for us today?
Yeah, well, my recommendation is to come and have a look at what we're doing at Rocket Fuel. So we've been around for a few years now, and we do this thing that's loosely termed crowdfunding, but it's much, much more than crowdfunding. It's a way to connect with your audience. And we've got a really cool new feature that we're currently getting ready to launch called Space. And Space is kind of like, I guess, your social media group where you can share content, connect with your community of supporters, but you can also generate revenue by having content that people can unlock through products that lead them to exclusive posts and through subscriptions that give them exclusive content. We've got something really cool we're doing. So if you're an artist, if you're a brand, if you're a creator, we don't just work with music artists, we work with people across different fields as well at Rocket Fuel. I'd love to invite you to drop an email to myself, Andy at resoundmedia.co.uk. So that's resoundmedia.co.uk. If you're interested in joining a pilot program we're doing at Rocket Fuel, we have something quite amazing that we're doing through Space. So if you're looking to raise funds for a new project, that would tick a huge box. If you're not looking to do a crowdfunder, but you're looking to actually monetize your audience more effectively or create a sense of community with those who really appreciate your content, who really appreciate your music, your art, you can also use Rocket Fuel through the subscriptions, through Space, through ongoing engagement with the community. So we've got a pilot program we're going to be running throughout the summer, which we're super excited about. And if you're listening to this, a year down the line, this will be up and running and fully functional. But do get in touch if you're interested. If you've got a desire to take things further, we don't just have a platform. It's not just a website. There's people behind the platform and looking for people to partner with. And behind all that we do at Rocket Fuel, we have a wider curriculum. We teach called the Driving Seat, which helps people with personal development, creative development, business development, how you build your brand as well. So there's the opportunity to access some amazing tools like what we have at Rocket Fuel, but then also connection with the team and wider training in terms of, I say, personal, creative, brand and business development. So do reach out if you're interested to find out more, if you're intrigued, if you want to have a look at what we do with Rocket Fuel and some of the things behind the scenes there. That would be my one recommendation, because what's really cool about this is it is a partnership. We have some free programs that people can access, so you don't have to fork out loads of money. In fact, you don't have to fork out any money for several of our programs. And so we actually work in partnership with people on a revenue share. And it's really hard to find people willing to invest their time to support upcoming artists and entrepreneurs without having to pay a ridiculously high ticket price. I know I've spoken to online coaches where, they charge $7,000 for a program and you don't even get any one-to-one time with people. It's all, all
videos and PDFs and whatever it is. And what I love about Resound Media and Rocket Fuel and everything, it's like an online university, but it's not just a university where I remember coming out of university, I was like, what do I do now? I have no idea what to use all this knowledge for and things as well. You've really implemented like Rocket Fuel and lots of other things that are interactive and give and create action, which creates accountability, which then creates some other things. And I think that's really vital. Like you said, if you spend $7,000 on a training that you're just like, well, how do I action this? How do I actually implement this and things? And you haven't got the support. I think that's where you're bridging gaps. I love the fact that you've got royalty shares, revenue shares. I love the fact that you've got, you can crowdfund, other programs with Rocket Fuel, lots of different areas that you've covered that is really distinctive compared to everything out there. So yeah, amazing.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for having me, John. It's always a pleasure to connect, and appreciate you doing all the many things that I've learned from you over the past few years. There's always a great recommendation of a new app or a workflow or something. And I, really appreciate you.
I think we both do that. We're just bouncing around, like, we come across this. We both have the same goal of, we want to be successful in what we want to do. And I think that mutual partnerships, like you were talking about, just as friends or as business people, I just think that is so important. It's not just about keeping it all to yourself. It's like, no, let's just share. Let's help each other out. And
share and encourage. And I love your spirit of encouragement, John. It's very, very infectious.
Well, that's hopefully what this podcast is doing. It's just like branching it out and spreading the word. So, mate, anyway, thank you so much. I will add a link into the podcast description. And thanks so much, everybody, for listening. And I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers, Andy. Take care, mate.
Thanks, John.
Speak soon.